We're back with Michelle, Angelo, and the Rev Al. Michelle, the New York Times has some really disturbing reporting about how some of the most vetted refugees in our country, in Minnesota, are being treated. And I want to read it to you. Federal immigration agents in recent days have arrested dozens of refugees in Minnesota who have passed security screenings before being admitted into the United States, according to their lawyers and immigrant rights advocates. Michelle Garnett McKenzie, executive director of the Advocates for Human Rights in Minneapolis, said most of the detainees were being transferred to facilities in Texas. She estimated that at least 100 people have been detained. Quote, "It's happening very fast," she said. "It's devastating the community." Among the cases she cited was one of a Somali mother who was detained, leaving behind a toddler, and another family in which a mother and 2 adult children were detained. Do people there have any ability to find people who are being taken and detained and, based on this Times reporting, at least for now, held in Texas?
That's one of the difficult things about this. One of the cases where there's just really no transparency. When people are disappeared, they don't know where they're going. Some of them are going to a federal facility, a government facility called Whipple. You've seen a lot of pictures of that throughout the week. That's out near Fort Snelling, out near the airport in Minneapolis. They have people that are tracking the planes that are leaving Minneapolis, and they estimate that about 1,000 people have been shipped out of the state, most of them to Texas. But it's very difficult for them to track them. And there are people who are deep in the system, apparently, who may have been sent out of state, who have papers or who are either citizens or in the process of getting citizenship or have temporary status while they're going through that process. And that's one of the interesting things about focusing this in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, because if you wanted to really go to a state that has the largest number of undocumented immigrants, you'd probably go to Florida. You might go to California, maybe Louisiana. Because Minneapolis and St. Paul and the state of Minnesota has had such a robust resettlement program over years with the Hmong, with the Vietnamese, also with Russians and Ukrainians and people from Belarus and, of course, Somalia, many of them come through a process where they actually get citizenship or they have their papers. And so there are a lot of people that they're scooping up, it seems indiscriminately, even though they have citizenship. They seem to be taking people and then asking questions later. And in the process of asking those questions, they're deep, deep in the system. I just want to say one thing about what we were talking about in the earlier segment, though, about the shift in the polling, that 30% shift. That means that there are people who probably voted for Donald Trump, probably were concerned about excess immigration in this country, have changed their attitudes on this. And in talking to people who are fairly conservative in the state of Minnesota, one of the things that they have said is, what about states' rights? You know, what about the idea that the state can determine its own destiny? When the federal government starts coming in like this and telling a state what to do, they're very uncomfortable with that. And so Donald Trump is probably going to see some of his, Republican support peel away. In part because of the humanitarian nature of this and the horrors and what we're seeing on those videos, but also because this run counters to a bedrock conservative value, which is based on states' rights.
The hypocrisy knows no bounds. And you were talking about the manosphere. Joe Rogan is the one who compares that conduct to the Gestapo, asking for people's papers. I'm not ready to call him someone who is sort of marching in lockstep with the protesters, because it is the most both sides BS that I've heard come out of his mouth. And the notion that people are sort of selectively playing the part that is rooted in reality and ignoring the part that seems to be creating a permission structure for the excesses is ridiculous. So I'm going to play both parts. Here it is.
I see both perspectives. I see the perspective of the people that say, hey, there was an illegal program moving people in here to get votes, moving people in here to get congressional seats, and we've got to change that. We've got to take those people that got in and send them back to where they came from or do something, because if we don't, they're going to keep doing it if they get in office again in 2028, and it's going to accelerate. And you're going to have to take away some of the damage that's been done to a true democratic system. because you've kind of hijacked it, and they kind of have. And then I can also see the point of view of the people that say, yeah, but you don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to? So it's more complicated than I think people want to admit.
He's smart. I mean, he's not the smartest guy that I've played on this show, but he's smarter than that. And I would bet my last donut that he knows the first thing he said is BS. Hey, there was an illegal program moving people in here to get votes. There's no evidence that that happened. Bill Barr called it bullshit.
That's right. I mean, he's parroting, and that is a thing that he's been pushing for a while. And every time Musk goes on his show, that's what they talk about. I mean, what he's sort of giving a nod to there is great replacement theory, that somehow Democrats and others are importing all these immigrants so that they can sort of control the country forever and replace white people. I mean, he's really sort of tapping into that idea. He validates that conspiracy theory completely. And I think a big piece of it, and like I said, I don't want to herald Joe Rogan too much, but he's like, as you noted, he's a bit of a weather vane. He sort of shows where the wind's blowing. Audience capture is real. And he can't alienate a large part of his audience that fully is bought into that, but he also can't ignore it has come home. He can't ignore the reality of what the Trump administration is doing now in terms of these tactics. And the last thing I'll just
Can I just say how lame that is? So he's now for the great replacement theory and calling the ICE Gestapo.
Yeah, he definitely gets it both ways in this respect. And he gets a pass because he sort of seems goofy and like he's just asking questions and he's sort of earnest in his interest. But ultimately, he is afraid of saying anything dispositive because he doesn't want to turn off a big part of his audience. And because he's audience capture, like a lot of people are online. He's not a truth teller. And he's really not interested in the truth. He's an agent of audience capture. But there's this tension, right? Because on the one hand, everything that Trump is doing and saying, like in Iran, we have to talk about the protesters. I mean, he's literally talking about protecting protesters in Iran while his own administration here is attacking protesters. And this is what people like Joe Rogan and others in that space are trying to grapple with, is how do you tell Trump's story when it itself is such an internal contradiction? And the best that I can look at is that this has gotten so extreme, as Michelle noted with the polling, that the people are being confronted with the reality of it. And he has to respond to a part of his audience that now is seeing things that maybe they didn't see a few months ago.